Okay, Madam Chair, we do have a quorum.
All right, thanks so much. So we'll call this meeting to order. This is the meeting of the Service Committee of the Central Midlands Regional Transit Authority. And it's been determined that we have a quorum, and so we'll accept a motion to adopt the agenda.
Madam Chair, can we make one correction before?
All right.
And I think we inadvertently keep leaving out motions period, just to add that. Just in case.
I don't know that we have a formal place for that, Mr. Fergus, but you certainly are welcome to make a motion when we are discussing a topic. So I think
okay.
the board agenda has a section for that, but I think at our meetings, we just take motions as they come.
As they come, okay.
Right. Thank you for calling attention to that.
Right.
All right. So do you with that, would you make
accept the agenda? Right.
Okay, we have a motion from Mr. Fergus. Do we have a second? I'll second. Thank you, Ms. Gleaton. All in favor, would just say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And the agenda is adopted. Do we have anyone from the Midlands Transit Riders, Pam?
No, ma'am.
Okay, I think I'm going to follow up with Mr. Gossett on this item because it's important to me that we have this opportunity for feedback from our riders, but I know his work schedule often keeps him from being able to participate. So maybe you can help me, Pam, with that, making that connection and see if there's a way to work out another arrangement for us to just hear directly from riders at this meeting.
I sure will.
Okay. All right. The next item is number 4, adoption of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So move.
A motion from Mr. Fergus, and I will second. Is there any discussion?
I second it.
Okay. So with that, would you approval of the minutes, would you vote by saying aye? Aye.
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 I hear all three of us, so that's the minutes then are approved. Matters referred from the Board of Directors. We have one item here is the request for additional service for Batesburg Leesville from Mr. Kane. Is Mr. Kane on the call?
I do not see him on the call.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Fergus.
Since that's one of those weird things that we don't know what the request is, that I would move that we bring that back to the board.
Well, here's what we could do. I mean, the board referred it to us because they wanted us to hear the content. But since we don't have anything on that, could we defer that to our next meeting so Mr. Kane can provide us with something in the packet to consider before the meeting? That would work. Okay.
Sure.
So can we follow through on that, Pam?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. We'll defer item 5 until we have information on that topic. Which moves us to item 6, discussion and actions. And Mr. McWilliams, you're going to report to us on the service passenger amenities.
Yeah, there's no real new updates. We're still actively working on the bench sites and just waiting on sheltered orders to move forward. That's all I know at this time.
Do you have any projected date for receiving the inventory? I noticed that that nothing could get completed or got completed for this period, and that there were 13 sites waiting for the materials to arrive.
Yeah, I believe they're waiting until September is what I've been told, but I can back check that with Todd and make sure of that.
So we're not anticipating the arrival of any of those shelters or benches until then.
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. My other question was, I know that at our last meeting, they said that we do have benches available, and so they were putting their more attention on getting benches installed. that we had already had in stock. Do you know what's kept them from completing any of those for this period?
I do not. I'd have to double check that with Todd, unfortunately. I was on this call to help facilitate the super stop update.
Okay,
well,
I see. Okay, well, we'll wait to hear from you later, and
sorry
and
about
maybe you
that.
can help us get the answers to those questions.
Will
Does
do.
anyone else have questions for Mr. McWilliams on this topic, or do you have questions at all on this topic?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'm sorry that I am late to this meeting. I missed my calendar alert. So
Okay.
just wanted to let you know that I'm on the phone.
Thanks, Allison. And we're now on item 6A. If you have anything to ask or contribute to the discussion of the amenities.
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, then we'll move on to item B, which is the transit operations report from Mr. Bell and Mr. Smith.
Yes, how you doing today, ma'am? I appreciate the opportunity to be able to share where we are operationally, and like to focus your attention to our first slide of the actual report, which is the executive summary. We continue to make sure that this operation is fully staffed. We are ongoing with recruitment, and maintenance is the one area of focus at this point where we do have some shortages, but we are actively working strongly to fill those gaps where we are short. From an operations perspective, you'll see later on in the report where we've done our recruiting, and those efforts are truly starting to pay some serious dividends for us. The technology assessment with In-Momentum and Swiftly the momentum portion has been finalized with recommendations, and the Swiftly piece is still ongoing. That is definitely going to affect the OTP, to which Mr. Hubble will share later on during the course of this meeting. And we continue to work with strategic mapping to make sure that we're getting the performance of the system, and that is again in partnership with the Comet as we work to iron out those unique challenges. But the bus refurbishment campaign is ongoing. I'm happy to say that it's started, and although the September 1st date is slowly approaching, we have run into a couple of challenges to get that, to reach that date. So I'm anticipating seeing that being pushed back another 2 weeks. But I'll have more information to share with the Comet staff prior to the end of this month. Moving on to the next slide, that is the COVID-19 slide. If you like
I think you let's just hold that for the second half of the meeting. That Mr.
Thank you.
Huggins
Yes, I will.
change. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All righty. So moving on to customer service, we had a total of 62 complaints. That's 10 more comparative to June. I apologize there's a typo. So we're looking at a 19.2% increase from the previous month. The complaint rate is at 5.55 per 10,000 riders for the month of July. That's still putting us below our goal contractually of 6. As you can see in this report, the reliability was at 29, where safety was at 8, and friendliness was at 5, cleanliness and comfort was at 5, planning and services at 4, and communications was 1, with general comments being at 10.
Okay, Mr. Bell, I'm going to ask you to pause a minute. Let me ask a question or two. I'm continuing to think that the reliability complaints are closely related to on-time performance. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's very, very accurate. As we continue working with Swiftly, with basically running times of routes, again, Mr. Hubble's presentation will address this, but that is tied in to the reliability at a high level.
All right, well now, but we don't usually see safety as the second highest column on the graph. Usually it's been friendliness. So is there something different going on in the safety area that you're hearing complaints?
We had a significant number of safety events in the month of July. Most of them were non-preventable events. We did have some serious events that took place, and I'll be able to share a little bit more as we get into those numbers later into the report.
Okay, okay. Any other questions at this point from the other committee members? Okay, then I'll ask Mr. Bell just to proceed through his report.
Thank you, ma'am.
Madam Chair. when he
Yes,
finishes-
well, wait a minute, Mr. Burgess, okay.
Yes, when he finishes his report, I'd like to go back to something.
Sure,
But
sure.
I'll
Just
let him
hold
go
on to
till
that.
he finishes.
Hold on to those, and you certainly will have another chance to ask questions for sure. All right, Mr. Bell.
Thank you, ma'am. On the preventive maintenance slide, we ended up hitting our goal of 50 PMIs for the month. As you can see here, we're still hovering in that range of 45 to 55 PMIs on a given month. On to the next slide, our PM results. There are some significant reviews into the contract in regards to what is the true definition of miles between roll calls. Right now, we're in the process of reevaluating how that report is going to look, because it's definitely going to change how these numbers show. Right now, the target mileage between roll calls is 15,000. We finished the month of July at 12,812, which was 22 roll calls. Now, that's the area that we'll be focusing on, because there's some information that I think was overlooked at the start of this contract, where those roll calls should be reporting a lot less than they have been, based on the definitions within the contract. And so as we get into fixing that, I anticipate the report out for August numbers will see a revision of all the previous months to make sure that they are in line with the contract. Any questions there?
I'm not sure I know enough to ask a question about that. What about the rest of you? I just noticed that we were going in the wrong direction for the past couple of months in terms of the miles between road calls.
Roll calls themselves, and in the contract, I'll give you an example. A roll call would be in the event the vehicle is breaking down in the field and it needs to be attended to when returned to the yard for other repairs, or we have to replace that vehicle with another vehicle. That is one example. If we're doing a roll call where a vehicle is not able to start or leave the yard and it's being recorded in this standpoint, which in some cases it has been, that is one that should not be reported. So therefore, our numbers theoretically will look a lot better than what they're looking here.
I see. Anyone have any other questions about that? Okay, please proceed.
Okay, some of the maintenance campaigns. We still are working with New Flyer on the vehicles coming in for USC. I believe we have all in now. Since the time of this report, we were short by one. As some of you may have already heard, there was a challenge with the Cummins manufacturer on the engine plant, power plant, I should say. That plant was producing ammonia levels that was higher than the legal limit. And so they were working with a software change in order to resolve that issue. And they have since done that. And so now we're in the final phases of prepping these vehicles for utilization on the university service next week. Operator barrier doors are complete. So that is one long-standing item. We ran into an issue with getting the doors installed and designed, I should say, and installed for the trolleys, but those are now complete. And so we'll be taking that item off of our list. The remove of unsanitary cloth seating and the replacement with easy to clean seats that were purchased a while back. That campaign will be completed on the 6th, so therefore it's already been completed as we speak. So that is number one we'll be moving as well. The maintenance specific safety and training program is underway. That is going to involve a more detailed training for some of the existing workers there to bring them up to speed with some of the industry practices to maintain safety in the maintenance department. Bus rack motors for the breakers is scheduled to be here on the 20th. As you know, there has been some significant focus on that bus rack, wash rack, and that is the one area that we're looking to be able to save some cost for the agency, and we hope to see those breakers resolve the issue. The issue has been that those breakers have been tripping sooner, which causes the blowers that drive the vehicles upon exiting the wash bay have not been working as effectively as they should. So we're hoping to be able to fix that versus having to replace the true blowers. The bus body wrap evaluation, again, that is ongoing. We're working with the wrap company that is currently partnered with us, and we continue to see what we can do to improve the quality of those wraps for the duration of the contract. We've even reached out to them to see what they can do to provide us products to help bring back the luster of the wraps, and so we can have a better appearance of these vehicles for the duration of this contract.
How long do those wraps normally last? What's the life?
These wraps, based on the environment, are running anywhere between 3 to 5 years. And again, it depends on the quality of the wrap and, of course, the wrap, the individual, the company performing the job itself. But we've worked with this company for quite some time. We're real confident that they're going to be continuing to provide us what we need. And their recommendation at this point is 3 to 5 years. And that's based on the environment, of course, the wear and tear that they may get from, especially on 40-foot buses, wiping up against tree limbs that probably need to be cut along some of the routes, and things that are more or less beyond our control, just more environmental standpoint.
Is this sightline?
Excuse me?
Yes.
Yes.
Was there a question? I missed what that was.
No, just for clarification, Ms. Mood, I asked, was it sightline? Because we do
Okay.
have 2 vendors that do wrap.
Exactly.
All right.
Okay, moving on to on-time performance. Again, this number from a fixed route standpoint has been static, and as we work through our Swiftly and in momentum changes, then of course the strategic mapping piece will help show a lot more of improvement in the area of fixed route. But our paratransit continues to perform well, and they reached a 94.6%, 94.2%, which is just slightly below what they did the previous month, which was 94.6.
Okay, so we'll be talking more about this as on the item on the action plan, is what you said.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
All right. Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Burgess.
on this fixed route, I think we're gonna have to have a board meeting with the only item on the board agenda is all these contracts and consultants we have out there collecting data. Because for 3 years, all we've ever heard in a service meeting is this will be working. We're going with Swiftly, Translow, and nobody's telling us why something is going to work or when it's going to work. We need to bring all our contractors in to a board meeting and put our foot down on when we're going to get actual performance.
I hear your concern, and I have trouble being patient myself, but I'm gonna give Mr. Hubble and Mr. Bell a chance to tell us, because I'm expecting us to hear some progress reported this month. So, but hold on to that thought, because
No, I'm not gonna hold on. That's gonna have to be in the next meeting, or else as board members, we're wasting our time.
all right, thank you,
know,
sir.
Tell me,
Thank you, sir.
you can't tell me every month that a bus that's meeting downtown at the same time is 42% on time. If
Yes.
they're meeting downtown, something got to be giving them right information. So I don't know. We're just wasting our time.
I hear you, and thank you for those comments. And you, Mr. Bell, you have something else?
Not from an OTP standpoint, was ready to move on to passenger ridership.
All right.
So moving on to the all aboard slide. For the month of July, we had over 111,695 total riders. That is 30% less than the same time frame from the previous year, which had 159,615. With the corridor and local service being the two largest areas where ridership is strong.
Now, I'm not sure whether to have this discussion in this part of your report or in the report on ridership, but what insights do you have into what is contributing to that coming down? Because, I mean, we probably thought we couldn't get any lower than 2020.
Well, obviously, one major factor that changed between 2020 and now is, of course, we started taking fares. The free ridership, of course, ended, and so that's one aspect. Two, again, as we all know and have discussed, there is definitely the reliability standpoint. As those areas change, and I think reliability becomes stronger and the service is a little bit more predictable, yes, you could see an improvement in some of the ridership in these areas. But there's not much more to it than I think the number one factor is, of course, going from a free fare service to a fare service.
Okay. And on the previous month comparison, would you look at that graph? Because it says that we went down from June, but the graph looks like we went up.
Well, the down is you're looking at the the problem with, and we can make this graph look a little bit different, but it's the down portion is probably going to be more noted underneath.
Well, I see. I was looking at I was reading it wrong too, because the blue is July and gold is June, right? I was reading it, so that looks like it does reflect what the numbers are. Okay.
So from a number standpoint, from the previous month comparison, again, July was 111,695, and in June it was 112,471. So 1% difference.
So we can't really attribute that to fares, can we? Because we were charging fares on both those months.
Yes. We'll take a look deeper into it, see if we can find some other factors to share in the next meeting.
All right. And so that takes us to the top routes.
So the top four, last time we did top three, but we added in a fourth one. Right now you're looking at, again, the 801 is performing the strongest with 14,317. With the 101, North Main following up second at 11,045, and the 501, which is two notch at 11,022, and then the 701 Forest, which is at 10,371.
All right, so still our main corridor routes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. On to safety.
On to safety. This is where we spoke a little bit earlier about the AFR and, of course, our incidents. Some of the incidents involved some safety, non-preventable related factors, but the preventables that we had for the month was at 8, which was a collision per 100,000 miles, which is at 3.9. When I told you earlier that some of the incidents that were non-preventable involved individuals striking our vehicle, We had a couple incidents where passengers or other vehicles, I should say, ran red lights and hit our vehicle. Now, again, those were non-preventables. We even had an incident where an individual that did hit our vehicle was operating on a no license and no insurance, and they were arrested on the scene. But some of the other factors did involve operator awareness situations, not aiming high in their steering, and following some safety practices, to which we are going to incorporate refresher training for those individuals in those cases. So there is going to continue to be some more refresher points that will be brought up in future safety meetings, especially this month. And of course, our new hire training will incorporate some of the challenges and the incidents that we've noticed on the increase over the last 2 months.
All right, and so if I'm reading this correctly, all of the accidents that you described that resulted in injuries, and well, in all of the accidents were at a time when the bus was not carrying passengers on a revenue route. They were all
Yes.
deadhead. So the
Yes.
bus was actually empty at the time of all of the accidents?
There's only one incident that I know of, but that's in the month of August, where we had 4 passengers on board. And again, that was a non-preventable accident. And so therefore, it would be seen on the second page report in regards to incidents and accidents. But that, again, that was in August. In the month of July, again, what you're seeing here is fixed route. We had a total of 12 total accidents, and then we had 4 injuries. And again, these were during deadhead times.
Well, I'm relieved that we didn't have passengers on board when these took place, but that's kind of a curious pattern, isn't it?
It is, and one that we're going to pay attention to. Obviously, this is unique for this month and in this contract to see one at this high level. And so we're going to look at it as the months go on and see if there's any contributing factors that we can put our finger on and actually add to our training practices. One, not just for the operator, but also for field supervisors and dispatchers.
Okay.
Okay, the human resource slide, if you follow down 2 pages, we'll go to the staffing and recruitment. Right now, we have 111 active operators, and there's 32 that are in training. Again, this was at the time of the generating of this report. It has changed since then. We have 8 on leave for a total of 151 operators for fixed route. For USC, we had a total of 14 with 2 on leave, and bringing us for a total of 16. Now that number's changed because right now we have close to 25 individuals in training at this point. And by the end of the training program, we should see our numbers eclipsing the 151 for fixed route operators, and see our USC operators reaching 20. So that's a very, very positive movement. And as you move to the next slide, you can see where the training and operator graduation numbers continue to run strongly. Again, I attribute this to our new human resource generalist. Her experience here within Columbia and the surrounding cities is paying huge dividends for us. She's been able to build relationships with schools as well as unemployment facilities and organizations. And so our operator pool issues of the past will remain in the past, I'm thankful to say, and we'll continue to make sure that we're having good quality operators for some time to come.
Okay. And this is sort of an overlap question, but can you tell me if any of the operators that are on leave, or if any of those are because of COVID quarantine?
At this time, they're not. Most of them are either due to workers' comp or FMLA. And so our COVID quarantine has dropped dramatically, and it's far and few between. If it happens, we might see one in a given month, but it's not something that is high as it used to be.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay. So now we're to the key performance indicators. One thing I wanted to call to your attention on this, on your key performance indicators, because we really have talked about each one of those, but this shows that the customer complaints at 4.2, but I believe earlier in the report, you told us that was 5.5.
Yes, it is, and that's a clerical error. I'll work with the team to make sure we have that correct, but we'll make that edit in time for the actual board meeting.
Okay. So are there any questions for Mr. Bell on his report? And we'll hear from him again with Mr. Hubble on the action plan on item 6D. Hearing none, I will go on then to the ridership analysis. Is Mr. Harris on the call?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Eric, you want to talk about ridership?
Yep, absolutely. So I'll be reporting again on June 2021. The ridership reports, we're always 1 month in a hole due to the overlap, I guess, in contractual requirements from RTP Dev. So when we receive the July report, we receive them just probably a few days before this board meeting. But in order to have the ridership report in your packet, we report on 1 month prior to. But just reiterating, but also going over some higher level details of the previous month. And as promised, everyone should have a copy of the ridership report in the committee packet. And last year, through the first 6 months, we were about 832,000 passengers. And this year, we're around 775,000 passengers, which is near a 57,000 difference. And we do anticipate a significant increase from August to November, as U of SC has reported a 20% increase in student population. As far as U of SC, we carried a total of 526 passengers through the weekday for the month of June. And keeping in mind, they are on a reduced schedule. For total weekday ridership is up by 6%. The routes that stand out the most, but pose no concerns, are Route 1, and that's West Columbia Soda Cap, Route 76, Fort Jackson, and Route 77, Polo Road, which goes down Decker Boulevard to Brookfield. Soda Cap is consistently up and down, but I believe it is contingent upon the number of activities taking place within a month span that causes a skew in route performance. As far as Route 76 and 77, they are inline routes, so it's no surprise to see a decrease in ridership. Route 76 is down 33% and 77 is down 19%. It is much of the opposite for weekend ridership. Most routes are down. So it will be more convenient, I guess, to tell you the routes that are performing well. I'm looking at Route 1. It's actually I guess for Saturday level of service, they're down by they're up 22%. And DART service is pretty much doubled their ridership for Saturday level of service. Similar trends are shown for Sunday's DART service, as they are up by 32%. And from April to May, they were up 13%. So they're trending in the right direction. The last thing I would like to mention is that we are preparing the annual route analysis, and the completed document will be included in the board packet for the meeting on the 25th.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Burgess.
let me ask Eric, why are we including the USC routes, student routes, in with the general population with that comparison, and we're showing less ridership? Why aren't we showing that separate?
In the ridership report, it is broken down to show the U of SC routes. If you are you suggesting that we
adding that back to total ridership and comparing it to same period last year? Am I right?
Absolutely. So again, being in compliance with FTA requirements, we're using all ridership for all services. So it's not necessarily delineated between the types of service that we have. But if you would like to see those numbers separated in the ridership report, we can provide those as well. To reflect.
That's a requirement. What FTA requirement that says you have to show that separate or together?
No, I was reporting
the board.
Absolutely. I was reporting the numbers as it relates to the FTA requirements and considering that all ridership be reported in that manner.
So we report the university riders as a part of our total ridership, but on this ridership analysis, we pull those all out as U of SC routes so we can see what impact they make on the total ridership one way or another.
That's not what he's doing. So we're gonna have to get into that report, because I'm wondering, how do we get any good data if none of the equipment that collects the data is operational?
Right.
That's what I don't seem to understand.
All right. Now the fare boxes are let me just clarify, Mr. Fergus, and be sure that the fare boxes are operational at this point. Are they not, Eric?
Yes, that is correct. They are operational.
So the counts we're getting now are from the fare boxes.
Yeah, absolutely. U of SC students, they have a card and the operators have the ability to put in a code to make sure they identify any of those passengers.
Okay. So they're counted in the total because the university students can ride regular routes with that
Madam
card.
Chair, I'd like to finish what I'm saying, if you
Sure.
give me a chance.
Sorry. Sure.
All the college students around the city of Columbia have cards. You tell me, and they're using ID cards. So where you tell me that number isn't distorted over our ridership, and USC is getting something different? USC is using student ID. Is that correct or is it wrong?
U of SC students are using their IDs to identify themselves in order to ride our services for free along U of SC routes.
All right, so where's the count coming?
I would like to yield the floor to someone from RATP Dev to.
Well, that's who should be giving this report. You know, I can only speak for myself. I'm listening to this report every month that is not correct. And I'm listening to the interim general manager give us a report. You give us a report. We need to, as a board, we need to take a look at what we are asking board members to participate in. I still say it's a big waste of board members' time when we're not get accurate information and nobody's making an effort to give us accurate information.
So let me be sure I understand what the questions are that you wanted answered, because here's what I'm saying. Here's what I'm understanding, that if the fare boxes count when the students ride with their IDs, whatever schools they're on, they ride on the IDs and the bus driver records their boardings at the at when they board. And okay. And so if the questions are about how does that work, I think that's what Eric was saying. Our Rap Dev would have to respond to, because they are the ones on the scene doing that. And what he's looking at are the numbers that are generated and what the trends are by route of the numbers that are generated by the fare boxes. Am I saying that right?
Yes. So we do have a number of different ways that we can generate the ridership. The way that the ridership is currently broken down is that per route. And so we do have designated routes that are, I guess, more so catered to U of SC students. And along the corridor, anytime a passenger gets on the bus, when they show their ID, the operator they're able to identify that that is a student, and they are able to collect the fares or whatever it may be to delineate between the two different passengers. If there are none U of SC student.
All right. So we have certain routes that are on-campus routes, and those are the ones that are listed in the section of the report as U of SC. Those are the on-campus routes. And so we would expect that most of those would be students or staff or faculty riding on ID cards on those routes. But if we have people, other citizens who want to ride those buses, they can do that, but they pay a fare. Tell me if I'm getting off track here. That's correct. That's correct.
That is correct.
All right. And then, all right. So let's move away from those that are actually on campus routes to the general routes. And what happens there is that students can still ride those general routes with their ID. Without fares?
No, they would, for a general route, they would have to actually pay the fare.
They pay the fare we wouldn't be doing IDs on the general routes because they would be treated like everybody else.
That is correct.
Eric, now this is Leroy. Now, are you all talking specifically about the U of SC routes or just all of the college routes?
I'm glad you asked that question because I don't have a clue to what he's talking about.
Well, I was asking first about the U of SC routes on campus. That was one part of it. And then I'd moved to ask about students riding generally the general routes. And what I heard Eric say was that if you're a student and you ride a general route, not an on-campus university route, you are treated like any other passenger and you pay the fare for that route.
That is correct.
If you are Columbia College, Allen Benedict, a student, your ID will get you on any route that the Comet has. So what's the difference from a USC student ID and general transportation? How do we identify that? It's a different identification in the city?
Mr. Burgess, I thought he was saying that
Let him speak for itself. I think he can.
Okay.
So again, for any service that is contracted out with the Comet, what will happen is the person will identify themselves, or there's some type of identification factor. And from there, the operators have a code that they can put into the system in order for that data to be properly allocated to the appropriate ridership.
Now, the question was, does a USC student have access to the entire system with their bus ID, or is that separate payment other colleges may give those students right to the entire system and not USC students? That's the question.
Yes, Mr. Fergus, I'm not 100% sure about the
Eric,
relation.
I think I can answer that. Mr. Fergus, USC students, when they access the USC system with their ID, just the USC systems are routes. There's no charge. They present their student ID. If that USC student goes out and say they want to go to the Harbison area, Sand Hills area, when they get on our other general routes, then they will have to pay. They only have free access to the U of SC route.
What about the other colleges, Leroy?
And the other colleges, they have an agreement with us where as long as it's faculty staff, when they present their IDs, their access to system is free.
All right, my question is, I know that. Everybody else should know that. So my question is, why is somebody presenting information to us that's not correct?
So tell us what's not correct, Mr. Burgess. Tell us.
Everything Eric has said to us hasn't been correct. So why are we wasting our time listening to that when you know and I know how we set up these payments with the colleges. But he should know that too, if he's presenting a report to us. So he's giving us a report that RapDev should be giving us.
Mr. Fergus, based on, I think sometimes, even with myself, even as interim, with the number of agreements that we have with the universities or anybody else, sometimes you do have to ask to be sure, because I'll do that with my staff sometimes when I'm talking about something or I'm about to go into meetings. I don't think what Mr. Harris is presenting is he's trying to mislead or give erroneous information. I just think
that's not what I said. That's not what I said, Mr. Danchamp. What I'm saying is he's giving us a report that should come from RapDev that has the actual knowledge of. He's giving us secondhand that's passed to him.
Well, I know, for example, when we get info, or let's say, for example, ridership from our ATP Dev, it's going to be for the ridership of our system there, fixed route. And remember, we have other modes of service that are out there, and that information has to be collected or compiled by Mr. Harris. And when I say that, you know, when we start talking about things like Comet at night and
Madam
Lyft,
Chair, I yield the floor, okay? I take back my.
Okay, well, here's what I really, my main concern when I read the ridership report, I really was trying not to panic when I looked at the columns about 2021, June 2021, and saw how few routes were meeting the standard. I mean, it's just a handful of the ones that are meeting the ridership standard, and that's of huge concern to me because I mean those are mainly our corridor routes, and I think part of what I want to be going on is that once the data is collected and we look at and we see these reports, that there's some problem solving that goes on, not about so much about the accuracy of the data. I'm taking the counts at face value, but at what is it that's contributing to a report that shows us so few routes meeting the ridership standard when that's not been a usual picture for us over a period of time. So I'm much more concerned about that. And I think in this setting, you know, as a service committee member, I'm not able to do that kind of problem solving, the digging deeper to see what's behind the numbers of the riders. And I'm really counting on the Comet staff and the RapDev staff to be putting their heads together on this, because this is a problem for all of us.
Absolutely, Ms. Mood. This is something that, again, we're working with Mike Hubble swiftly, RTP Dev, to make sure that we resolve the matter. Because what we're seeing, not only are we faced with the pandemic and how that has affected ridership as a whole, but of course we return fares and we also see the effects of that. But dealing with on-time performance, we also compromise our reliability. So what we have to do is just get to a more stable place of service, and we should see those numbers start to circle back around. Well,
I think probably we are best, our time's best served then to move from just reporting on the ridership to the next item on the action plan to shed some more light on this. Is that, you have anything else, Eric, for us? Okay, and any other questions from committee members? Okay, well, thank you very much. And Mr. Hubble, we'll move on to you. Item 6D.
Thank you, Ms. Mood. And hopefully I can possibly address some of Mr. Fergus's legitimate concerns as well as a brief presentation. jump right to the purpose just to update the committee on actions since our last discussion on these topics, both technology and on-time performance during the previous July 14th committee meeting. We'll discuss the next steps and then entertain any open discussion that there may be. Near-term achievements over the last month, we did execute a very carefully crafted and collaboratively developed memorandum of understanding between the Comet leadership and the RapDev leadership on an interim invoicing process. That process was actually implemented and kind of tested beginning with the April invoicing cycle. It has now been memorialized and is in place until many of these technology issues, as we vet them, can get resolved. We will be looking at developing and utilizing the technologies that remain going forward and utilizing them to support a more permanent and frankly less laborious invoicing process. We also reviewed and did receive and review and discuss with the firm Momentum the technology assessment that was sponsored by our ATP Dev to review these technologies that I've spoken to before, where we clearly believe there were gaps, in some cases redundancies, several sources of truth. There are a myriad of technologies currently in play at the Comet, many of them producing different results, different information, oftentimes because the data is being polled at different times, causing confusion, causing misinterpretations, and therefore affecting some of the sound business decisions. I'll talk briefly about the highlights of that in momentum assessment. Their findings were really broken out into two categories. One were those software systems that have a direct impact on on-time performance, and also while they were in the neighborhood, so to speak, they also looked at some of the other systems that, while there were some issues, they really didn't have an impact on OTP, but need to be vetted and discussed, and action plans for resolutions of those recommendations by the Comet staff, which in many cases they're working on. But the OTP related systems findings, they did confirm that there are overlapping reporting systems. Several, at least 3 of the systems have overlapping reporting features, again, reporting different data, 3 different sources of truth, so to speak, rather than one. Those are being addressed as we bring, particularly as we bring strategic mapping on board. Strategic mapping, we're finding it to be a very robust system, and may in fact be able to replace or supplant some of the existing systems that have been in place for a couple years now, and reducing the overall software inventory, so to speak. So we get to that single point of truth for each of these data elements. Also, pretty much the same thing applies on the scheduling side between Remix, Trillium, and Optibus, looking at the potential of going forward of weaning the Comet from the use of the Trillium software, taking advantage of elements within Trapeze and within Optibus and Remix, eliminating one of those call it conflicting software systems. Also, they recognize the dual AVL systems, and Mr. Deschamps and I have had discussion about the translock and the strategic mapping, but the translock is pretty much tied uniquely to the university system, but as that system evolves, as the experience evolves, we will be looking at attempting to eliminate the use of the transloc system, providing the university with information via some of these other softwares. They found that the operations management, just the day-to-day operation management, the dispatching and the like, was very paper reliant. How do we exploit some of the existing systems in place today to optimize the dispatching and communication and tracking, and eliminate some of that reliance on paper, which obviously tends to lead to errors in the data, missing paperwork and the like. They also found that some of the passenger information system displays were not functioning. That is an observation that we already knew about. It really has to do with the transition from Clever Device to strategic mapping. That is a work in progress. That those system displays at the transit center, as an example, were unique to Clever Devices, and they are not capable of. They're not just a TV screen. They are not capable of producing or broadcasting and displaying the information from a system other than Clever Device. So Mr. Deschamps and the IT team are working on getting those systems, getting those displays transitioned out so that passenger information can now be prominently displayed. The other systems I referenced, they talked about, they looked at the multiple fare collection systems based on the mode of service being provided by the Comet, had some feedback there. All of the telephony systems, the legacy telephone system, StratMap has the ability to do automated schedule information, but the telephone system that's currently in place is a legacy system not capable of handling those inputs. And I know Leroy and the team are currently working on going to a more robust and featured telephone system. And then ADA eligibility tracking, they had some feedback that be able to use some of the software elements that are currently licensed by the Comet to aid them in enhancing their eligibility, ADA eligibility tracking. And then also they commented that many of these softwares that are currently in place at the Comet, while legitimately licensed and appropriately licensed, there was not a detailed ongoing software maintenance agreement that is traditionally defines whose responsibility is to do what in the ongoing use and maintenance of those software systems. Additionally, swiftly, the runtime analysis subscription, we did execute the annual subscription. We are meeting with Swiftly. The Swiftly software is identifying for us a myriad of issues out in the field regarding route patterns, timing. We just had a discussion in today's meeting about a stop in particular on the 84 out by the zoo that is an on-call stop, yet when the bus doesn't go out there, the systems in place to track OTP ding that route as missing a stop, and therefore degrades the OTP when actually you're providing the service as intended. So this Swiftly software is giving us the tools to identify the issues that we need to resolve. And to Mr. Fergus's comments, I understand that in reviewing some of the history, that the board has been advised that technologies, these myriads of technologies that have been layered into the Comet operation, that they were the solution to many of these issues, when in fact they are simply a tool to identify the problems, the issues, and then it's up to the Comet and the contractor, whether it had been TransDev at the time or RATP Dev today, to resolve the problems. But frankly, y'all weren't talking to each other. You were emailing back and forth and, making accusations of contract violations and worried about liquidated damages. You weren't coming together and talking, using these technologies to identify the issues and collaborating on the resolution. That's where we are today. That's where we've been for the last 3 or 4 months. And unfortunately, it's going to take time to work through some of these issues, because over the last 2 or 3 years, the systems, the coordination and collaboration had grown apart, and that caused several distractions or disconnects out on the street that we are now just finding out about and being able to bring them back together. So we are working on reconciling inconsistencies in the turn by turns. As an example, the communication that's given, the communication that's given to the operators as to follow this map. In many cases, we've identified there are 3 different directions that could be provided to an operator depending on the source of those turn by turns, whether it's coming out of your scheduling software Remix, whether it's coming out of literally an Excel spreadsheet that's manually maintained, or that it's being communicated out of the mobile data terminal and StratMap. There are 3 different sources of truth, and depending on the operator, they pick which one they think is the most accurate and follow it. So we're identifying, we are now able to identify those inconsistencies with utilizing some of these technologies that have been in place, and they have to get systematically corrected, because it's like one domino falling. You correct one, well, now there's an interlining issue that needs to be corrected as well. They need to be very carefully dissected and corrected. Next steps talked about, we're going to continue to work on time points, stop IDs, and those turn by turns using the Swiftly route pattern tracking capability that exists, and working with Eric and Blake and the RapDev team to get those synchronized, and again, pick that one source of truth. We have developed an action plan that addresses these OTP issues. We continue to push forward with those, and we had a meeting Monday to digest and kind of initially disposition some of the InMomentum technologies, and we'll be continuing those discussions and actions over the next 3 months. We will be soon as initiating the APC automated passenger counter validation process. That will be about a 2.5 to 3 month process that RATP Dev has agreed to support the field efforts that are necessary to validate those APCs. Then we can begin to use the Swiftly software to really begin to analyze. Once we correct these route patterns, we can begin to use the power of the Swiftly software to analyze runtimes There's some routes that start out on time during the day and in the morning, but by late morning, they are running so late that they actually just don't even run a trip. And just to get back on time, they skip a trip, so to speak, and just start trip number 8, and trip number 7 is never run. So we'll be able to identify those, work with Eric and Blake to add running time, often cases, pull running time from other routes that have plenty of time in them, so that there's a rebalancing, so to speak, and then adjust the public timetables, frankly, so that you're advertising a service that you can run. Madam Chair, that's all I have.
Let me start with my questions, and then I want the other committee members to contribute, because I guess the basic question is, I understand the kind of, or I grasp a little of the intricacies of the interconnectedness of making one correction that then affects other route interconnections. So I understand that. But in terms of our expectations, are you saying that that everything has to sort of happen at once? All of the changes have to happen at once. They have to culminate in some overall changes at one point in time? Or can the service committee expect that, given what you're discovering and problem solving on, that we would see an incremental improvement in on-time performance as you make changes along and along? So that's one main question. Do we have to wait until this 2 to 3 months before we see any improvement in on-time performance, or will we be able to see the things you're discovering and make and solve and changing the system to accommodate will show us some incremental improvement in on-time performance? Maybe try to answer that one first.
Yes, ma'am. There's, yes, the interlining of some of these routes, as you stated, adds a level of complexity that changes have to be dealt with on a broader perspective. But there are also changes, those incremental changes that you inferred, we can be making those as we work towards a total, frankly, system recalibration. So you should be seeing some improvement in those OTP numbers, particularly as we clean up the data, because in some cases it's merely the way the Comet has set the system, some of these systems up to collect the data. The collection of the data is not accurately representing what's really happening out in the field, where the field conditions are actually better.
Well, and I think that's the other part of my question. And I think this is what I was hearing Mr. Fergus getting at, that in fact, if we have a system that says all of the buses have to show up and for the pulsing at one point in time, and they are all there to do that, it feels like a paradox to say they are only 42% on time when they're all there at that given point in time, which I mean, I don't know if I'm hearing you say some people skip a route in order to get there on time for the pulsing. I mean, that's what's terribly puzzling to me, and I think that's what Mr. Fergus was saying also.
Ms. Mood, and to Mr. Fergus's point, I was there in early July. I was there for a week and dealing with communicating and talking with the RapDev team. Frankly, my observations were similar to Mr. Fergus's, that I just intuitively believe with what I saw and these data issues that we are uncovering, you're actually delivering far greater than a 40 to 45% on-time performance level of service. The way some of these data points have been established, and albeit it is, this is on the Comet, and Mr. Deschamps and I are working on trying to get the data, the time points better identified, frankly, lesser time points, because you've assigned time points to virtually every stop in the system, yet you publish a timetable that only has 4 or 5, I'll say, on a route. You should align your time points to those 4 or 5 published time points in the timetable. That's the standard, because that's what you're telling your customers. I'm going to be at this stop at 10 o'clock, and I'm going to be at this next time point at 10:20. That's what you're advertising. You've put in data points where you've got an improbability of performance, because you're capturing time, arrival times, departure times at every single bus stop in the system. That is so non-traditional and an oversaturation that you can't do it. It's just improbable. So we're working through all of those issues.
All right, so what I'm mindful of our time, and that we also have to have a couple of items and then the COVID discussion. So I'm going to kind of wrap this up, but I'll just summarize as to what I'm hearing is that you are satisfied that the steps that you're taking, that we will be able to see real results, some sooner than others, but probably an overall major difference in what our on-time performance looks like on paper and in the field, and those match better within a 3-month period.
Yeah, I think so. And Ms. Mood, I'll accept the feedback from both you and Mr. Fergus that we'll focus the team on bringing back to you as part of these briefings some specific examples of issue found and resolution, so that each of you can have a flavor for what is happening, what is being resolved.
What does the progress look like? Yes,
right.
Yes.
Yeah. Not just here's the number, but how are we? Here's some real empirical examples. That's good feedback.
Okay. All right, Mr. Fergus, Ms. Gleaton, do you have anything that you want to ask or add?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
Carolyn Gleason. I ride the bus when I'm going, to appointments and things, and I've noticed all the buses get there together. They all leave at the same time. And I have noticed as those buses leave, they're basically most time on the same time schedule. And they're pretty much on time. Well, the rest of them are waiting until the rest of those buses get there. They load up. I guess the driver counts us, all the people on the bus. And I think he puts that number in that machine. Am I correct? He puts that number in the machine after he counts
Yes.
the bus. And then the buses leave, but they all leave normally at the same time. Now that's what I have noticed. And those buses are pretty much on time.
Okay. Well, your firsthand observation is reassuring to me, and I thank you for that. All right, I'm going to move us then on to the item 6E. And thanks, Mr. Hubble. On to item 6E, the update on reimagining the Comet and the long range plan. Eric, Mr. Deschamps.
Yes. So it was requested by the board to provide data trends before finalizing approval of the 60/40 recommendation. where 60% of the outcome leans towards ridership and 40% towards coverage. So after the presentation of the ridership analysis that I was mentioning in the ridership report analysis, we will be requesting the board for final approval to accept their previous recommendations.
Okay, so that will be on the full board agenda.
That is correct.
Okay. And what about the Lucius Road Super Stop update?
All right. We would like to ask the service committee to grant approval to issue the notice to proceed for the Lucius and River Super Stop. We have received a list of warrants that were not satisfied in the previous traffic study. That was for the installation of the traffic signal. And it is understood that the current traffic volume does not support a traffic signal install at this time. This is not to say that things will not change, but based on DOT's metrics, we do not meet those requirements at this present time. So, but if needed, I can elaborate on some of those details, and I have Andrew McWilliams on the line if need be as well. And if granted approval, we could begin construction within the next few weeks and have the site completed around the start of the year. In the meantime, we will take a closer look at the bus routes and help mitigate the traffic impact. And we plan to submit another traffic study after services are implemented to see if we can get again, a traffic signal installed.
Well, Eric,
Go ahead.
I'm going to have to say something here because,
Right.
I mean, this is crazy making in my mind. If DOT is doing a traffic study now and not taking into account that every bus in our system is going to be coming through this super stop for the pulsing, and they're saying, oh, well, we're looking at what's happening right now. We aren't going to look at what happens when you implement this plan. And so don't get a traffic signal because the current traffic doesn't justify it. Are we saying that then we have to proceed, construct, have every bus sitting there waiting for the traffic to clear to get off of Lucius Road before they will begin to do another traffic analysis? I mean, that is so absurd that I can hardly even get my head wrapped around it. But that's what you're telling us?
With this particular location, that would be the ask. Again, I have Andrew McWilliams on the line. He can speak to some of those warrants.
All right. So then before we get to Mr. McWilliams, Mr. Burgess, I know you was trying to say something.
I'd like to make a motion that we terminate all actions on the Lucius Road Super Stop until it's, because we're heading up the wrong, if we don't have clearance, we should have had this done before we invested any money to do this. So even that we couldn't.
I get what you're saying, that you don't want us to proceed to say, go ahead and construct with this unresolved traffic issue.
Right.
And I get that. Now, I don't think we could have done it sooner because what I'm hearing from Eric is that the DOT's processes say they can't do it until after the fact. Once you've created a traffic mess, then they'll put a traffic signal in. But we can't have people go through the mess.
That's correct. Plus, we hadn't made any community outreach on either side of River Drive as to what's coming into that area. That hasn't even been done.
Well,
So we need to flag
that as a piece to follow up on. But I'm gonna ask Mr. McWilliams if he has something other light to shed on this.
Well, the DOT does take into account future data. Basically what they do is, or what was done by CECS, another firm, was to collect the data from historical SCDOT data for the road, and then go out and take traffic counts last year. Last year was a different year, obviously, with COVID, so not as many cars were on the road. So DOT also implemented a 12% increase in those numbers for that year. And then they project out based on the super stop addition and growth rate in the area for a design year of 2025 And from historical data in the area, the growth rate is actually less than 1%. So in the study, it was used a 2% growth rate, which is conservative. And the real issue is that both Lucius and Gibson are local streets, and there's not much traffic on there. River Drive accounts for over 90% of the traffic that's in that intersection. And so DOT, to warrant a signal, there's 9 different warrants, and this is based on the MUTCD, which is FHWA, the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. Basically, there's 9 different warrants that can be analyzed for different intersections. And there were 4 that were analyzed for this because the other 5 didn't affect this intersection. So 8-hour, 4-hour, peak hour, and crash experience is really what was analyzed for this one. And on all of those, they failed all of them, both in the current year and the design year. And realistically, there needed to be a significant increase on the side streets for a signal to be warranted, because if they do put a signal in, what DOT really worries about is stopping the main thoroughfare in that intersection would actually cause more problems than to stop the side streets. So that's the basic analysis. And if you have any questions on the actual numbers, I can get into those too.
Well, I'm not sure I can digest all that, but here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Are you saying that, I mean, our design was not to send these buses through the neighborhoods on these side streets. It was to come out of Lucius Road into the main thoroughfare. And
correct.
That's why the
problem DOT is having is that the main thoroughfare for River Drive is the 90% of traffic is going just on River Drive and not coming out of Lucius or Gibson. So taking the left out of Lucius doesn't warrant a signal just because the buses are coming out of there. It needs to be more of a volume to come out.
Okay. So here's my non-technical common sense.
Mm-hmm.
If I were doing this study, which nobody's going to ever let me do, thank goodness, I would be saying, let me take a look at what goes on now on Laurel Street. What is that traffic like when all those buses come in and leave Laurel Street? And get that picture of traffic flow and say, what if I move this traffic flow to this site on Lucius Road going into River Drive? This is the volume of traffic that will be there. We know it because the buses all come in and go from there. We know exactly that's what will happen at the super stop at Lucius Road. And so then, I mean, they can count all the turns and everything they want to on Laurel Street, lift that picture up, put it on Lucius Road, and see what will that mean for traffic on River Drive. I mean, that's such a overly simplistic view, I know, but what they're doing now doesn't make any sense when it's not taking into account what actually we're proposing to do on Lucius Road. How do you break through that?
Well, Madam Chair, let me say something.
Yes.
Now, the Comet bus system is maybe 130 years old, operating on Main and Sumter Street. That problem of the buses was a John Andolph idea. It would take us about 90 days to recorrect that if we put buses back not like they were, but to put in a better routing system. See, and that's the problem we're going through with a lot of things now. John Ando brought stuff in and he's no longer here, and we're still trying to make it work. It didn't work when he was here. It's not going to work when he's gone. We have all these programs like Comet on the go, doesn't work. Little buses running down the different areas with only 27 passengers a year because John thought if he creates stuff, he could get grant money. We have to decide that if John Andolph ain't here, maybe the things that he set up should have gone with him. See,
Well,
even with Lucius Road, it's John Andolph.
well, here's
That's
the
not
kind
a
of,
court, it's John
here- here-
Andolph.
here's what I see, and what you're saying is that if the pulsing approach to getting on-time delivery of services and making the trip easier produced more vehicles than the city of Columbia is willing to tolerate at the Laurel Street site, Laurel and Sumter site, then we were led to look at, well, what is another place that we can operate that system? So what you're saying, Mr. Fergus, as I hear you, is that we need to re-examine if the problem that was created by the city, for the city, from our current system of operating the buses, if that can be resolved in a way that doesn't have to create the super stop. I think the DOT has thrown us a ball that we can't catch on this one. You know, I don't think in good conscience that I can even suggest to the service committee that we go ahead and start construction on something that we know is going to create chaos.
Correct.
So
Correct.
are we all together on that?
Yes, you're absolutely right. And what we were doing, when we were changing the bus system around, we thought we would create stops that so you could catch a bus and you didn't have to come downtown. Remember? And then all of a sudden we came with this pulse, and it was a disaster from day one. No parking downtown. I mean, but some people like it because you can get all your buses at the same time, but all our buses ran 10, 15 minutes apart. I don't care where you were going. Now we have them bumper to bumper going down the interstate, 3 buses bumper to bumper going down Taylor Street. That's a reduction in service. That's not improving. When I could have catch, you say, so we got
Well, I think what's being asked of us at this point is, as Eric is asking, if the service committee is ready to approve them proceeding with construction of the Lucius Road site. And what I'm hearing, I mean, I think probably I need to have a motion to say, well, that we are not ready
I
to
made a
issue
motion
that
that we
approval.
stop all procedures on Lucius Road, but I didn't get a second.
Well, would you be willing to just restate that, to say that that the service committee is unwilling to approve proceeding with the Lucius Road site at this point? And then that will do what you're saying.
That's good.
And that will answer Eric's, what he had to bring to us. And then really that goes back to the board to address the issues that you are raising, Mr. Fergus.
Yes, okay, that's fine.
All right, so is the motion that the service committee it does not approve proceeding with the construction at the Lucius Road site at this point, and we're referring the larger issue back to the board? Is that an accurate statement of the motion?
That's correct.
All right, and do we have a second for that?
I'll second it.
All right, Ms. Gleaton, thank you. All right, and any other discussion or comments? All right, then we're ready for a vote. And I think we better record this vote, Pam.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Brennan, Ms. Teresa, Mr. Fergus,
Yes.
okay. Ms. Gleason,
Yes.
Ms. Moon,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay, I think we're done then with that. All right, and with that, I think we've completed the agenda items for the service committee, and we can proceed with the COVID portion of the meeting. Is Mr. Huggins here to chair that?
No, he actually is still tied up with another appointment. So, but he did say to proceed on. You do have a quorum to proceed with, COVID.
Okay. All right, well then let's move on then to item 7A. We have to get this. I've got to sign back in. I'll let my thing. All right, let's see. When I printed my agenda, it didn't show this up. So item 7A, would you restate that? Let's look back and see. Okay, an update of the executive orders, Mr. DeChamps.
Yes, to all the committee members, just an update on the executive orders. Since the last COVID-19 ad hoc committee, the governor has ended the state of emergency back in June, so that's no longer in place. But one thing we wanted to make the committee aware of is on August 4th, the mayor of Columbia issued an emergency order declaring a state of emergency. It requires facial covering in response to the increase in the Delta variant of the virus. And also just to give you a little bit of update on his emergency order, that's been found by the Attorney General's office to be in violation of state order. But even with that, it doesn't affect the requirements that the Comet or public transportation has as far as mask requirements. We're following the TSA's mask requirement, which is through September 13th, which is requiring masks on public transportation. So we're continuing to enforce that throughout our fleet. We did provide additional information and links to the committee if you want to search out additional information, FTA mask requirements, but we did include those links in the packet for additional information.
Right, but essentially, we are covered by the FTA requirement that riding public transportation and being in buildings with public transportation requires masking.
Right, nothing has changed, according to what.
So even though there's disagreement between the local rules and the state rules, we are still operating with masks until
Absolutely.
September 13th.
Right, and we're hoping that probably within the coming days or weeks, we will hear an update on that. And especially when we look at, what's going on with the Delta variant. So hopefully we'll get an update shortly from TSA, I'm sorry.
And that's likely to be an item that'll be reported at the full board meeting. In that right?
Yes, especially if we have it before.
If there's
then,
a
yes.
change. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So all right, so then on the update of the Comet operations, I'm on 7B. Mr. Bell, are there any changes that you need to report to us on that?
Were you going to that in your?
That's
That was in
fine.
your packet. Seven.
Yeah, we have that.
Slide.
Yeah, I know it's in your packet there.
For the
Yes.
COVID? Yes, I'm sorry. Let me go back to that real quick. So the COVID efforts, I'm going back to that slide, I apologize. Right now, from a vaccinated standpoint, we have not seen any increase in the numbers. We're still maintaining at 71% of the staff, both TCS and RTP Dev being fully vaccinated. Right now, we're continuing to ask employees of their efforts on getting those done, the remaining. The one area that we have some significant improvements in has been in a partnership with both TCS as well as a new company by the name of, I shouldn't say new company, an existing company by the name of ZEP. ZEP is a huge company involved in cleaning products, and they have a new program that is referred to as the ZEP Assured program. We have had countless meetings with them, reviewed their process that is basically catered to COVID cleaning, and it's currently being used in several different school bus systems, stadiums across the country, arenas, and it's being very quickly adopted by a lot of organizations as a level to combat against COVID. This process involves a thorough cleaning and basically interior restoration of the vehicle, and it basically provides a armor coating on all touch points from the floors, the walls, to the ceiling, the driver cab area. Every area that you can possibly think of within the vehicle is thoroughly cleaned prior to having what they refer to as an armor coating that goes on the vehicle. This was a strong effort, not just for us here from a Comet system standpoint, but also for the university. We thought that this would be an excellent additional layer of protection and trying to fight against COVID for not just our customers, for the employees as well. I'm happy to say that through the Comet's acceptance of it, we've already started the process. Matter of fact, earlier this week, where they've actually went through and took a look at the new buses, the new ones dedicated to the university, and conducted the first level of cleaning and providing the armor coating. This is going to be an extended effort over the course of the next several months to get these vehicles outfitted, but as part of that program that involves both ourselves and ZEP to come through on a monthly basis to provide an audit of the effectiveness of the program. And that actually is one that is extending beyond our current cleaning efforts. And as part of that effort, the fogging program is being evaluated, and based on the Comet's acceptance of this new program, we will take a look at how the fogging efforts, basically, I'll be honest with you, will be a thing of the past, because the cleaning and spraying from an electrostatic process will take place during the typical daily interior cleanings. And so instead of doing fogging on a weekly, we'll be able to spray effectively to combat against COVID on a daily basis rather than on a weekly basis. And so I think this program, I want to thank Dennis Franklin with TCS. He was able to find this program and bring it to our attention. And it's definitely one that I know TCS has adopted to perform on other contracts that they're working on outside of our ITP dev. But it's definitely one that is getting some strong recommendations and is definitely, I think, one that the Comet and the university will definitely be benefiting from.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Burgess.
I'm relying on your expertise now. Can we get a statement from the COVID committee that we recommend that all Comet employees and contractors employees be vaccinated with COVID vaccine?
Well,
and just go on
actually,
record as that.
Actually, the full board approved a resolution at our last meeting that said essentially that said the Comet will require vaccination for the Comet employees, our direct employees, and that we will pursue negotiations with RapDev for a similar policy with our contract staff. I don't think we need to make that resolution because the board has already made it. But Pam, that probably is a good segue to the item 7C, which is the update on the vaccination program. Mr. Bell has let us know that the numbers really have not changed for the RapDev employees. We are still at about between 70 and 75% vaccinated. So Pam, can you take it from there on this
Yes,
agenda
ma'am.
item?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. So Health Force is continuing to conduct both testing and vaccines at our Comet Central Hub. They're there Monday through Thursday until at least 5:30. Sometimes they go longer. They're providing the vaccines, the Johnson & Johnson, as well as Moderna. And currently the plan is to continue at least through September, although they could go longer. This information is being posted on our website, on our social media, as well as we're working with RATP Dev, and Olga has helped us to make sure that announcements are on the buses, on the overhead on every bus, to let people know that they can get their vaccines at Comet Central. Now, since the inception of the vaccines at Comet Central, we have provided over 500 vaccines. I don't have that exact number. I'll be sure to make sure I have that to you by the next meeting, or by the board meeting, whichever you prefer.
Yeah, I think the board meeting would be good.
Okay, I'll make sure we have those numbers. And, but they are trending upwards, especially with the increase of lowering the age limit of who can receive the vaccines, as well as concerns of the Delta variant. They have seen a bit of an uptick there. With the Uber and Lyft program, we're seeing moderate increases in individuals utilizing that partnership with the Comet to provide rides to vaccination locations. That kind of got off to a little bit a slower start than we anticipated, and I can also report those numbers to you as well by the board meeting, what those exact numbers are.
Okay. All right, and so then, Leroy, can you tell us where we stand now with the board's resolution about requiring vaccinations of staff and working with RAPDev to require vaccinations of their staff?
Well, I can update. Yesterday, I did speak with Rick Morgan, Attorney Rick Morgan, and he will be providing communications, a memo to the committee and then to the full board as far as moving this along. So hopefully he's going to have a draft, if not this week or next week. So I'll be sharing that probably with the committee and then on to the board as far as our next steps with our employees and what will be in that communication.
All right, and the only change I would make in that is that I would not want us to wait a month to come to the committee before it goes to the board. So if he's going to have that done next week, let's make sure we talk with Mr. Huggins about that being on the board agenda, because
yes, and
we're in a time crunch with this pandemic.
Yes, and that's what I was telling him. As soon as he can have it, hopefully, definitely before the board meeting, so we can get it out before in a draft, so it can be reviewed and then have it ready, whatever our next steps are, to let the board tell us the next steps.
To implement what that resolution intended. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Madam Chair, one more question.
Okay.
On all these new hires we're hiring as drivers, so all new hires should be vaccinated. That's correct?
Well, we don't have the authority to do that, but Mr. Bell, what are you doing in that area? How are you handling that?
I'm going to have to refer to RTP corporate. We have not started doing a mandate with new hires, nor have we pushed the issue with new hires at this point. So I'll have to speak with them in regards to how they would like to see that change. But we can definitely have something for you by the next meeting.
Okay. Well, and I would ask you to try to be ready to speak to that for the board meeting, because if we're getting some guidance from Mr. Morgan, I know the whole board would be interested in where RAPDev as a corporate structure is with this.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Anything else on these items? If not, then I think, well, the only other thing is the chairman's report. Without Mr. Huggins here, we are ready for a motion to adjourn?
So move.
And a second? And all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, then we are adjourned. Thank you very much.